So let's talk about the difference, how to become a real estate appraiser, investor.
Okay, sure. I think that there are two things that becoming a real estate investor is really something that is important because if you really are passionate about real estate, and I think it's extremely important to be really passionate about real estate, you, I don't think that you're ever really going to become rich selling real estate. You can make a lot of money selling real estate, but the costs tend to be a lot. I think the most prudent thing is for you as a real estate agent or to be into real estate to invest your money and invest in real estate. And one of the easiest ways to do investing in real estate nowadays, I really believe, is to invest in single family homes. If you have a lot of money, certainly you can go into large apartment buildings, and that's a completely different animal. But I think the biggest thing that most people have to realize when they are investing in real estate is that there's really three different ways that you can value property. And you want to make sure, obviously, that you're getting good property. You want to make sure that you do due diligence and you're really understanding what types of property that you're getting into. And I think that you also want to make sure that you're buying property in a good location. And the most important thing is you want to make sure that there's a cash return. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're making cash. Some people will argue that it's okay initially to have a negative cash flow, which essentially means having, your costs of owning the property are higher than the rent that you're bringing in. But really, having a positive cash flow is really what it's all about. There are three different ways to to value real estate as an investor. First of all, there's a capitalization rate. Capitalization rate usually typically works with larger buildings, buildings that are, apartment buildings in maybe like five, six, up to 20, 100 units. Okay. Those are the things that you're going to value on a capitalization rate. And so investors in that situation are going to look at the operating income of the building, so the money the property is making, the net operating income divided by the cost of the building. So, for instance, if you have a building that you paid $1 million for, or let's just say it's on the market for $1 million and you're analyzing whether you should buy it, and it brings in a net operating income of $100,000, it would be $100,000 over $1 million. That would be a 10% return on your investment. In other words, it would be a 10% cap rate or capitalization rate, which is pretty good. Okay, and you generally want cap rates to be somewhere around 10% or more. Um, Smaller buildings you can value by doing gross rent multipliers. And again, that is the amount of rent income divided into the price. And so that usually varies around the country. It can be anywhere from like 7% to things that we see here in San Francisco can be anywhere from 15 to 20%. Or 15 to 20 gross rent multiplier. It's a fixed number. And so you want to look at gross rent
And so a
multipliers.
question for you. So
Mhm.
yeah, so just a question for you. I mean, if there's a 10% return you can make a year on a property,
Mhm.
I mean, that's actually an amazing investment where, as far as investments go. I mean, how competitive would it be to actually get that property? I mean, wouldn't you have to like bid and compete with hundreds, like, I mean, many, not hundreds, but tens of other investors? I mean, and sort of outbid yourself to the point where there's like less return?
That's a really good question, Alex, and I hate to sound like an attorney, but the truth is it depends. It depends on the kind of property it is. It depends on the location. For instance, like here in San Francisco, we have hardly any investment properties available for sale right now. So when investment property comes on the market, I'm talking about a building that's, like 15, 20, 50 units. It usually sells pretty quickly because the competition is really intense. But if you go out to the suburbs, in any metropolitan area, the competition won't be that intense. It depends on the quality of the building, how much maintenance the building needs, the type of tenants that you have, and the location. That just depends on the competition. And those factors are also going to affect that capitalization rate.
Hmm.
Yep. So you have the capitalization rate is one way to market a property. The gross rent multiplier is another way to market a property, and then really the cost per square feet. And that's something that a lot of people would use, and that's obviously you just take the square feet of the building, how big the property is, and divide it into the price. And for instance, here in San Francisco, if anything is more than like 15, if there's a gross rent multiplier, or excuse me, cost rent of like, I'd say like $200, you really want to be careful. So you want to buy property in between $200 and $300 a square foot. But that's in San Francisco. You could go to Albuquerque or to, anywhere in the middle of anywhere, I don't know, Midwest, and it could be a lot less. So you really just have to look at the local markets. I do want to say one other thing though that I think that a lot of people are really concerned about investing in property that is outside of their area. And I will just tell you that it's number one, it's nice to have investment property that's close to where you live. If you want to manage it yourself, or if you feel like you need to be close to it. Nowadays, I don't believe, Alex, that you have to be close to your investment property. For instance, I live in San Francisco. I have investment property in Louisiana and also in Oklahoma. Nowadays, it's very easy to find cool single family homes, for instance, that are brand new with 3 or 4 bedrooms that you can buy for like $150,000. You don't have to hardly put any cash down. You can get yourself a really good property manager, and you can find a real estate agent very easily. If anybody has any questions about that, certainly hit me up. You can give them my contact information. But with nowadays, between FedEx and scanning documents and email and everything else, find yourself a really good property manager, and don't limit yourself to just where you're living. Look at other areas that are really less expensive, where the returns are higher, and are strong economic areas.
Let me ask you, how much do you see the cost of hiring a property manager cutting into the cost of having a successful real estate in investment, where your margin there is only like 10% of that investment, right? In a good case.
Right.
Um,
It's really not that much. The typical property manager will take anywhere from 7 to 10% of what the rent is, your monthly rent. And so 7 to 10% of monthly rent. If you have a good property manager, it's really well worth the money because, again, as I mentioned, you can go into find areas in the country like in Oklahoma, Louisiana, North Carolina. There's some areas now like in Arizona and Nevada that are really coming back. And if you have a really good property manager and you can get a bigger return as opposed to where you're living right now, you're not going to mind spending, 7% of the monthly rent to find a property manager.
and it makes sense to hire a property manager for large buildings or single family homes as well.
Both, both. I would recommend having a property manager for both because depending on how many properties you accumulate, I have too many properties right now that I would even consider trying to manage it myself. It's like, I have a day job. I sell real estate. I also am an author. I go and speak, and I have a course and all that kind of stuff. I can't be bothered with trying to find tenants for my property in Louisiana. It just doesn't make any sense for me to do it.